Hello everybody. It's Steve the Amateur Historian. I'm out on the street. I'm sweltering, but there's a gentle breeze hitting me. I'm all sunscreened up and I'm ready to face the day like a man, even though I'm getting real tired of how bright there. Why can't my camera just always say, hey, calm down? So it is July 8th, 2021 today. So y'all know what that means. It means it's a new day and a new story. But before we get to that, remember as always to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. I'm trying to post there at least multiple, twice a week at least. Multiple forms of extra content, lots of extra stuff you can only see if you become a Patreon supporter today. The link to that is in the description with this video, along with the links to my Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and my Reddit subreddit pages. So all that said, let's get to today's tragic story. So it's 1930, and a plane, small commuter plane, is coming in for a landing at an airport in Lincoln, Nebraska. On board is a 21-year-old University of Nebraska student named Alberta Brinkerhoff. And the plane is just kind of reaching the end of its trek. It's kind of doing the little circling around till it can come in for a full landing. So it's still cruising, fairly high altitude. And for some reason, shortly before they land, Mrs. Brinkerhoff climbs out, opens the door and tries to climb out onto the wing of the plane, and someone grabs her and pulls her back in. And you'd think something like that happening, someone would be very close to this woman. Even if they don't understand the circumstances, they might be like, why did you do this? We need to keep an eye on you. But apparently, nobody actually kept an eye on her, or at least nobody kept a close eye on her, because as the plane is kind of finishing its circling to descent, the plane is still about 1,200 feet up in the air. She accesses the door to climb out of the plane again. And this time nobody stops her and pulls her back in. She manages to get herself out onto the wing. You're on the wing of a flying plane. You have nothing, there's no apparatus there holding you in place. You are just a loose entity, just flying on a wing. So, to no surprise, she fell off the wing and tumbled 1,200 feet to her death. She landed right on the runway of the airport. And it was bewildering, to say the least, because, first of all, people have to be wondering why, and it's the 1930s. People don't really understand psychology that great. So even as people are trying to comprehend and understand why would somebody do something like this, they're probably not coming up with the best possible scenarios. But they started asking people that went to school with Alberta, did you see any signs that she was suicidal? Was there any signs that she was unwell? Something. And nobody she went to school with had an answer for that. Nobody seemed to have any idea that she was struggling. Nobody had any ideas. So, you hear these stories about mysteries and mysterious things that happen, especially mysterious things that happen before people die. And there's not really an explanation for them. Sometimes what happens almost even defies, science, psychology, if you will. You'll find these top 10, top 5 YouTube videos, top 5 people who had strange things happen to them before they died. And it's not so much that the cause of someone's death or who did it is mysterious, but it's just strange things that happened in relation to someone, and then, you know, something happens afterward. And it's just these very odd instances where it's really hard to understand. So, you know, people who went to school with Alberta said they saw no signs that she was depressed, no signs that she was unhappy, no signs that she was suicidal. But, you know, police and the coroners and, you know, all these people said, well, it's a clear case of suicide. This woman opened the door and climbed out on the wing of a plane more than 1,000 feet up in the air. Of course it's suicide. Blatant and obvious. And I can understand that, but it's still mysterious. And it's still troubling to me, the fact that, you know, this woman already tried once to climb out on the wing, and she gets pulled back in. She's apparently in the cockpit because it's kind of a small plane. So she's right there with everybody else. I would assume it wasn't just her and the pilot, because what would the circumstances be that would happen? Did she charter her own plane just to do a short trip? And apparently Alberta didn't really fly much, or she hadn't up to that point. So it's bewildering to me that somehow after she tried doing that once, that there literally wasn't somebody just holding her down. And they claim that, you know, when they saw her on the plane, she was seat belted into her seat. But obviously they weren't paying close enough attention, because at some point she took that belt off, possibly twice. But here's what's interesting, because, you know, the authorities again say, you know, it's a suicide. Obviously, I don't care what her friends say. I don't care that nobody seemed to notice it. It's a suicide, and it could have been. You know, some people are phenomenal at masking the pain that they're enduring or whatever they're suffering under. They're great at masking that. And in turn, you know, even people that know someone really closely might have no idea that this pain is bubbling under the surface. And that's something even now a lot of people don't understand. But back in 1930, I mean, the average everyday person wasn't spending a whole lot of time wondering what might be going on in the heads of people they knew. Just kind of, they took people literally at their face value. If they were smiling, they were happy. If they were frowning, they were sad. And that was kind of the begin all and end all of comprehending how someone was feeling. You know, for the most part, there's always exceptions to that. So somebody masking how they were feeling would have been even less noticeable back in 1930 than it would have been now. So it's very possible that Alberta was just concealing feelings she had, and therefore nobody noticed them. But it's interesting, the pilot, you know, who acknowledged, like, he saw her approach, he saw her get on the plane, and everything, you know, seemed normal. She belted in. She just seemed calm and chipper. And as they were preparing for takeoff, you know, they're pulling onto the runway, they're getting ready to start moving. The pilot said that Alberta chuckled passively, almost like a giggle, and then said, "Oh, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous." And it was almost like she was kind of giddy and excited to go flying. Now maybe that could be interpreted as, like, maybe, you know, again, she was fully planning on jumping from the plane and killing herself. And this could have been like, she was saying she was nervous and implying that was in relation to the flight, but really it was more that she was just in a very fractured emotional state at that time, even though it couldn't be seen by anybody. But the way it's described suggests to me more that this was someone who was just kind of taking a short flight, young college student, probably hadn't really flown before. It is the 1930s. It's not like everybody was flying all the time back then. And it sounds more to me like she was just kind of giddy and excited to go on a plane flight. And I know that feeling. The first time I got on a plane, you back out slowly, you kind of move around the other planes, and then you hit the straightaway and you're cleared for takeoff, and all of a sudden it's like, and then you start flying down that runway. And you get goosebumps, and you get like you can maybe be a little bit scared because you haven't done this before and it's new, but it's like really exciting at the same time. So the way that her demeanor at that time was described is very indicative of someone flying for the first time. So again, I could be totally wrong about this, but it almost seems like she was genuinely excited, but even maybe a little bit like riddled with anxiety. And you know, it's hard to say. You know, every avenue you go down on this, there's the possibility that it's like you're completely wrong. And I just wonder a little bit if maybe there's some kind of unexplained psychological break that happened here. You know, you'll see someone act a certain way for years, and then one moment, all of a sudden they flip, and it changes everything. Now, I'm not saying I necessarily believe that to be the most likely scenario in this case. I mean, you have a few possibilities. You have that she was just planning on committing suicide all along, and she had just hidden those emotions. And just for it to have been that there had to be something psychologically askew in her mind to make her do this. It's either that she had some form of depression or something like that that made her want to end it all. But if that's not the case, there still had to be something amiss, you know? Even if she was somebody who was out for a wild thrill and that's why she got kind of excited when the plane was taking off, getting excited about going on a plane for the first time and seeking out the thrill of leaping off the wing of a plane at over 1,000 feet in the air, so a situation that will kill you, no question about it. Those are two drastically different things. But I just want to, for the sake of putting all the cards on the table, say that I just wonder if this was just one of those kind of strange, bizarre things where obviously something psychological was going on in Alberta's mind at that time, but she maybe didn't know about it yet. You know, a lot of people that develop psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies, sometimes they don't really start showing those symptoms, if you can call them that, until they're, you know, their 20s and their 30s. And, you know, there'll be things about someone that they don't even know about. And so when they come to the surface for the first time, you almost don't know how to address them. They're almost foreign, but it's like they're a part of you at the same time. And I just wonder if there was some kind of snap that happened in Alberta's mind, and she was planning on just getting on this plane and making this short flight. And while she was sitting there, something happened, and she got this desire to stand up, unbuckle herself, and walk out onto the wing of this plane. You know, a complete and total break with reality, because again, you are going to die in this scenario unless you somehow are able to hold on to the wing. I just wonder that when I read the pilot's description of events and how she acted when they were starting to take off, and this does not seem to me, even somebody masking behavior, this does not seem to me somebody who was minutes away from actively, you know, taking their own life, you know, having it all set up in advance. I don't know. It's still very mysterious to me, even though it could have just been somebody who was planning on killing herself and saw an opportunity to do so. It's a strange world full of strange stories, I tell you what. And before I let my mind wander even further, I'm gonna cut myself off there. But it's just a very interesting story, in addition to being horribly tragic, whatever the circumstances were that led Alberta to walk out onto that wing. I don't know. So, thank you guys, as always, for stopping by, taking in my daily stories. Again, they're not always funny and kooky. Sometimes they're really sad and depressing. The objective of the series is to just find stories that are interesting, and sometimes interesting means happy, and sometimes it means sad. But all that said, thank you so much for watching. As always, thank you for supporting this series, for supporting my channel, and for supporting me. If you want to help me out further, haven't done it yet, or you're new to the channel, remember as always to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. Again, I'm always posting extra stuff there that you can only access if you become a Patreon supporter today. The link to that is in the description with this video, as well as the links to my Instagram, Facebook pages, my Reddit subreddit, and my TikTok. I always manage to get those out of order sometimes. Anyway, lots of stuff out there for you. So, all that said, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian, and I'll see you tomorrow.